Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with a few duel videos. Today we're going to do 3 between my brother and myself. My brother is playing Fluffals, which he can't wait to pick up the fusions for once the Megatins drop. And then I'm playing kind of a revamped version of Magical Reptiles. Originally this deck started as kind of a brilliant Fusion Xyz toolbox deck, but when I decided to go full Magical Reptiles, which is literally just spellcasters and then reptile monsters that special summon themselves for free if you have spellcasters, I didn't think I needed Brilliant Fusion for whatever reason. It just seemed like an inconsistent extra engine, but I decided to revisit this deck after a couple months, and lo and behold, the Brilliant Fusion engine does actually make this deck a lot better, as you might expect. So we're going to be testing that deck out with all of its new tech. We're going to be tweaking this thing as we go, but just like normal, I'll be doing my analysis of the plays, kind of retrospectively, what might have I done differently, things like that, and it'll be a quick introduction to both of the strategies in the first game as well. So, to begin, my first strategy is pretty much summon a spellcaster monster, doesn't really matter what, because then monsters like this will special summon themselves for free. You can go ahead and pause and read what these guys do, but pretty much it's Gigabyte drops itself for free, one at a time, if you have a spellcaster on your board, and Hat Tricker just needs 2 monsters total, at least, anywhere on the board, and you can just drop it for free. So they help you make your big Xyz summons. And when you go for King of the Feral Imps here, that lets you go and fetch more reptiles, so that can be Kageto Kage or Gigabyte. So Gigabyte I just talked about, but Kageto Kage is another really popular old school rank 4 deck cards. Like you see that in gadgets back in the day. If you normal summon a level 4 monster, you can go special summon Kageto from your hand, and that makes it really easy to go for an Xyz summon. In this deck, I just went for star drawing here, so I'll be drawing off of the king. But then, as you can see, the Hat Tricker is really there just so I could extend that play to bring out Rafflesia. So Rafflesia lets you copy a Trap Hole or Hole normal trap card from your deck. So think Treacherous Trap Hole. I'm also playing Bottomless and Floodgate at 1 in this deck right now. I'm still deciding whether or not I want to play Nightmare, because I kind of like stopping monster effects, but at the same time I don't want to destroy stuff. So it's like it's kind of a weird gray area that I have yet to test out and decide. But he goes and leads with Toy Vendor. So Toy Vendor is pretty much a very quick accelerant in this deck. It lets you discard any dead card in your hand or set up a card like Edgem Chain that triggers in the graveyard to then basically reveal the top card of your deck. And if that happens to be a Fluffal monster, you can go special summon it. It's totally optional though. And then you'll trigger their effects as well. So Dog is the Stratos of the deck, and you'll see some of these other guys in a moment. But the reason I didn't max C here is because I didn't want to gamble on whether or not he would hit a monster, first of all. Because if he doesn't hit anything, he can just end his turn, max C's gone, and next turn he can pressure me. But then another problem with Toy Vendor is the fact that it's totally optional in that special summon. So even if he goes and gets a monster, he might not actually go and special summon that thing. So just too much of a gamble. Owl is interesting because it's a Stratos for polymerization, but then it also lets you fuse using him if you use him on the board. So he basically becomes polymerization on the board, but as a monster. So it gets around like Naturias and Anti-Spell Fragrance and stuff. The reason I max seed here on the Shapes summon is it's an inherent summon first, so I can't chain it to that, but once it hits the board, it has the ability to recycle one of your monsters, in this case Dog, and that lets you bring back an Edgem Chain from your hand or grave. He actually did tell me he made a mistake. He misclicked and chose the one from his hand, which meant he expended it unnecessarily. Since you can only use 1 chain per turn, he couldn't fetch an extra Fright for a card for that for free, unfortunately. So I mean, when you play on DevPro, there are misclicks. It's just the nature of using a computer as opposed to playing by hand, which is unfortunate. But the main thing here is I did want to make sure that I chained max C to the activated second effect of Fluffal Sheep, so I guaranteed get a draw. Sure enough, he followed up with a fusion spell anyway, draw for that. Main thing here I flubbed on is I forgot that I had max seed. So normally my play pattern is wait for him to bring out Sabertooth and then snare the Sabertooth and or the sheep, so I can basically see him spend one more of his fusion spells, and once he's down on options, destroy the most annoying monster using a Trap Hole. In this case though, because he was under maxi, there was no reason for him to do anything, so he just suicided his monster. It comes back for whatever reason. This is this big Armades monster that gains a ton of extra attack, but yeah, he went and rammed into the king just so that he could kill my Rafflesia. Obviously, with an Armades effect, I have no chance to activate Treacherous from the deck. So even if this thing dies once per turn and revives itself only once per turn, I mean, I just didn't have the opportunity to activate that. So play patterns don't necessarily always hold. I guess that's the lesson here. Just because something's usually good doesn't mean it's always good for the situation. So just a quick reminder on that. Fortunately for me, the Rafflesia really is meant to just help bolster my defenses, and when he cleared my field, he actually allowed me to do this. So this is the main reason the Brilliant Engine is here. Obviously, I have a Garnet, which isn't really the best draw of Maxi, but regardless, I played 2 just so that I would not double, or I would not draw the 1. And the main reason is I have like probability videos you could see in my playlist Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! But the short of it is if you play 2 copies, your chance of doubling them in your opening is extremely small. If you play 2 copies, it's only like 1.9%, or yeah, 1.9% in an opening hand of 6 cards, so going second. So that's not even 2%. That's not even 1 in 50 games, which doesn't even matter. Like a tournament's not even 50 games long, right? On the flip side, you do get a chance of opening 1 of them, which means you're kind of unlucky in the sense that instead of 15% chance of opening with 1 in a hand of 6, you actually do go up to 28, so almost double that. But the way this deck has Kage Tokages and stuff, and all these alternative monsters, drawing the 1 Garnet doesn't hurt nearly as much as drawing the 1 Garnet when you only have your 1 Garnet for Brilliant Fusion. So that's the reason why it's in here. But pretty much this lets you go send your Trick Clown to the grave immediately, which helps start all your plays. The double summon off Seraphinite is amazing as well, because you see me go for just 2 more normal summons. Castel just gets rid of his annoying monster, and then Brilliant Fusion can power up. Here I just drop a Jurigato for free. The reason Jurigato's in here is because this really allows me to push for an OTK. Like you can see here, he can go clear a monster out. All these guys attack, and even if the Trapeze Magician didn't let me attack twice, which in this case it did, the Jurigato can give an attack pump to a monster, so a monster like King of the Fair Lamps is harder to take out in battle. It might stick around longer, but it also can do a larger chunk of damage and potentially end the game. As you can see, this was an 8,000 to 0 finish just all in 1 turn. So this is the type of thing that this deck intends to do. Not necessarily the best game for Fluffals in this case, so we'll go on to the next round. So this one was more of a fail on Solemn Scolding that I'm actually testing in this deck. The idea is that I would be able to back up all of my solid plays if I open with it turn 1. But the problem is in Yu-Gi-Oh! You can't guarantee that you'll open with it turn 1. So that's the problem there. I just put together the same 2-card field I always do here. That Fluffal Wings is an annoying card to deal with. You might see it in a second. But yeah, this is the type of play I was talking about last game. So Fright for Sabertooth, or Saber Tiger. Yeah, it is Sabertooth in the DCG. So this thing, when it's fusion summoned, lets you go and revive your sheep. So he basically goes for a sheep Sabertooth play that puts 50, 200 attack on the board. This guy doesn't die if you use at least 3 monsters to fuse, which once in a while he'll do. It just depends on whether or not he thinks he's going to get hit by a whole trap. But then in the case of like Fright for Sheep, the annoying thing is it also has the Armades effect, and then it just comes back if it dies once per turn. So very annoying monster, very annoying pair of monsters here. So you could see him, he got bottomless on that sheep, mainly because I didn't want that to come back, but you just saw what basically happened is Fluffal Wings is this fun little card in Fright First. It says you could banish it from the graveyard with another Fluffal, and if you do, you draw 1 card, then you send the Toy Vendor you control to the graveyard to draw 1 more card, and then you trigger Toy Vendor to fetch another Fright Fur or Edge Imp card from your deck. So you basically trade in your Toy Vendor for 3 free cards, so it's a +2, which is pretty annoying. And the fact that a lot of the pieces are searchable, and the fact that this deck gets Toy Vendor turn 1 pretty much every single game, makes that kind of an annoying hand refresher you have to deal with when you're playing against Fluffals. So if this deck pops up after the Megaton reprint, be wary of that. But he basically Miracle Fusions right into a board wipe on me, so fortunately I am playing Jurigato here, so I am able to survive with my hand trap. That's another function of him. Just the sheer versatility is awesome. And as you can see in this case, I mean, you could argue that, yeah, Jurigato is the reason I even lived in the first place, so had I died, the Solemn Scolding wouldn't have mattered. But this is the kind of problem that I'm seeing with Solemn Scolding. It's the idea that if I open with Scolding, then that's a pretty good way of backing up my Rafflesia, my King of the Fair Lamps. But then what if I draw it like this and it just kills me? Like, I'm not even considering the 3,000 life point cost, which is pretty significant in this deck because we have cards like the Trick Clown and the instant fusions and stuff. But even barring the life point cost, there's just the fact that if I draw it too late, it just won't be as good of a card. Throwing the life point cost, it becomes even more so, more obviously so. So I'm just not sure whether I do want to play the Scolding. Really, it's an experimental alternative to the Solemn Strikes, just because I don't want to get a ton of Solemn Strikes, get them limited, and be like, oh, well, I should have just waited. So part of me is just testing things out while being too stubborn to pick up strikes. But let me know what your thoughts are on the Solemn Scolding at the conclusion of this video. I have actually one more that shows how Solemn Scolding can be used effectively. So that's the problem, is it a win more card, or is it actually something that helps the deck setups? So this is game 3. As you can see, I opened Garnet, which is not the best thing in the world. I mean, with a 5-card hand, it's slightly less. It's like 22%-ish that I would open with this, which is 1 in 5 games, just about. So that happens, you know, every couple matches. Not the best number that you want to see, but you'll see that it's not necessarily the end of the world for this deck. So I actually got my defense blown up. He gets his Stratos, he gets his Toy Vendor, he sets up a +2 card, but he actually doesn't go for it, mainly because he doesn't have another Fluffal monster in the graveyard, which is pretty good for me because that one turn is all I need to, you know, go crazy with this board. The reason I'm also testing this deck is all 3 of these games I went first, as you can see, mainly because my brother likes going second with Fright first, so he could just OTK his opponent. He doesn't really like how the deck doesn't have a turn 1 proactive play. In my case, though, I like going first because I could set up my Floodgate Xyz monsters like Abyss Dweller or the Rafflesia, but it's really a problem when I end up drawing cards like Hat Tricker that need more monsters on the board to effectively enable me to go for my combos. So that's something that I have to consider. Is it worth going first, or is it better going second? Nonetheless, in this game, though a little slow, you know, Garnet's just bulky enough to survive once in a while, so I am able to go for a double Xyz. The reason I went for that Abyss Dweller is I just want to deny him that +2 as long as I can. And this is really the type of game that I want to create. Basically, Solemn Scolding backing up an Abyss Dweller and a King. So like if King lives, I get another free card. If Abyss Dweller lives, most likely the opponent will struggle because you bring it out on a deck that just can't function with the graveyard locked down. And then Scolding itself has the ability to go and stop anything pretty much. So there's the fact that you know, Sabertooth is summoned here with only 2 monsters, so just get rid of it right there. Prevent the summon of that, prevent the other monster as well. And here he just scoops it up because in this case he has no more monsters to field, and that's more than 4,200 damage. But the idea is this deck, as you saw between the few of these, it can consistently pump out 2 Xyz monsters in a single turn. It can do even more if it has access to like Trick Clown or Brilliant Fusion or whatever. And because of that, it's a very solid second turn killer, maybe even first turn killer if it's going second. So the reason I wonder about Scolding really is it worth using this to try and play more of a control game when I can draw it inconsistently, not necessarily opening with it? Or is it better to forego this and go for more combo pieces? Is it better to play different kind of trap hole cards? I'm just not exactly certain what may be the best route. I'm gonna just go and keep testing this deck out. Tomorrow is another episode of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! We'll be talking about the side deck, but then Thursday I'll be back with hopefully an updated version of this deck that has some tweaks to it. Maybe I'll continue playing Scolding, maybe I won't. We'll see after some hours of research what I come up with. Then Friday will be the deck profile for this as well, assuming that I find something that I'm at least happy with. So thanks guys, this is JDGaming. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of these duels in the deck down below, and I'll see you guys next time.